So I've just finished doing some basic maintenance in my fish room, and it occurred to me that one, I've never really made a video about my tank with me actually in the shot, and two, I've had probably 2 or 3 people visit and they've all said that the size of the tank does not come out when I post like Instagram or YouTube videos. So I thought I would give an actual run through of my fish room and the way that I run the tank. I'll probably make other videos on the inhabitants in the tank, my quarantine procedures, etc. But I thought this video would be interesting for me to show people what equipment I've got, how I've set the tank up, why I've set the tank up, why I have, and just give it a run through. So I'm going to flip the camera around and I will start outside with basically where the water comes in, and I will go through the whole process of how the water gets into the RO system, into the salt mixing bin, pumped up into the fish room, and then just go with filtration and the lights, etc., the pumps, and take it from there. So I'm going to turn the camera around and we will start outside where my mixing bins are. So my garage is slightly unusual in that a third of the floor drops down about 5 foot, which is very handy because 1, it goes out to my garden, and 2, it means all the filtration for the tank can be in another room effectively. Right, so basically the water gets mixed in, I'll show you the building actually. This is, so that is a little building that I made to house 2 IBC containers which are here. So basically that's the RO tube that comes in. Each of these is 1,000 litres. I use them both for salt actually. I've never really worked out why people have 1,000 litres RO because I've never used that much. So I fill one up, fill it with salt. I put 40 kilos of tropic marine salt in, and then I've got a Red Dragon pump which basically comes out the bottom of the IBC, comes in, and then it goes up, around and in, and then that just circulates around while I'm mixing it. And then I've got a valve here, and this one goes along and into the fish room basically. So that pipe is this pipe here, which comes up and it goes up through the floor and it goes all the way up into that 400 litre bin in the corner. So I fill that up. I don't heat my water when I'm mixing it, so it's cold obviously in the winter, probably 7 degrees. I put it in this vat and I leave it because I do weekly water changes, so I will refill it the day I do the water change, so it's got a week to heat up to the ambient temperature of the room. And this fish room runs at, I think that says 24, even though it's not playing for the camera, and higher up this one is 29. So the tank runs at about 26. So within the week that water temperature will be fine without having to add any heat to it. So if we come back down to the sump room, this is my RO unit, and that's a 25 litre DI resin chamber. So the water comes in, that's why the feed line there gets fed into this. So this is I think it's 400 gallons a day, 1,500 litres, something like that a day. It's got 2 pumps, it's got 2 membranes, 3 pre-filters, and obviously a large DI resin. So once it goes through there, I can either pump it outside to the mixing chamber for the salt, or I can put it down here. So this is my RO reservoir for the tank, and from there it will either go into the sump, or most of it, probably 95% of it, gets pumped up into my calcium reactor. So if we turn to the filtration, so these pipes here all come down from either the skimmer, the calcium reactor, the tank itself, obviously. I think that's it. Anything else up there that I can think of? And they all come down over into the back, and then they run down and they come into, oh, this is the Royal Exclusive Greenbox 3 sump with a large filter roller. So all the pipes come down into that corner, and then they come through that triangle down there, come across onto the filter fleece. I'll take this out. You can see there. You can see obviously where it's moved up, so the cleaner part down the bottom is fresh, and the filthy gunky one at the top is the old bit. So this moves on a sensor, which was originally round the side, and as you can see, when I measured for the sump, I didn't take into account that I need to get my hand round there to touch this sensor should I need to reset it. So it was an absolute nightmare. So I sent off to Royal Exclusive for a new bracket, and I've moved it round to the side, which makes it a lot easier for me. So basically water comes in there, goes through the fleece, comes through media blocks, etc., through the main chamber, and this has been running for 2 years, so you don't really get that dirty, to be honest. I mean, obviously I've cleaned it, but I mean, you get some sediment down there, but for 2 years in use, it's pretty good. I've got a little media reactor there, which has got some GFO in it, and then the what is essentially the return chamber has two, just see one over there and one underneath the ATO. These two bulkheads basically which go out, and they come down there, and then they go into my two external return pumps, which are the Biz A200s, and then inside down there I've got the Biz A400, which runs up to power my skimmer and my UV sterilisers, which are up on the same floor as the tank. And then I've also teed off, and one goes through to this little tank here, which originally was going to be a refugium, but it's never been used as a refugium because my nutrients are very low most of the time. I've just put this reactor with this GFO in probably in the last 2 weeks, so the tank's been up, well, it's been wet for 2 years, and I just had a sudden spike in phosphate. It went up to about 0.13, something like that. So it's down at 0.07 now. So, and I don't think that's probably gone out now by this time, that GFO. What do I dose? I dose, I'm trying to think. So I've got DOS dose, which does, that is manganese. No, not manganese. Magnesium. Yeah. So I dose magnesium, and that's it at the moment. I don't dose anything else because most of the heavy lifting is done by the calc stirrer and calc, which doses, I think I'm at 14 litres a day. I just dose it 24 hours with a Versa dosing pump, and it gets fed out of the RO, which is below it, by the Versa, which pushes it into the feed there, and then it comes out by this pipe here, and it goes all the way over on a slight gradient down, and I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you just see that dripping. In the corner. Right. So, and this is all the plugs for running all of the sump area and some of the stuff upstairs, but you know, they're pretty self-explanatory. Skimmers, return pumps, the red dragon outside, the two UVs, the lights for the sump and the heaters, Bursars, Inkbird, which is up there next to the frame for the Apex system. That is my little Komoa, which pumps up to the calcium reactor upstairs. That's the plug for the A400 because it's German, and I never bothered to change the plug over, so it's in one of those big old adapters like that, and that is the control box for the 400. And then so before I go out, I'll just do, so this is a full battery backup, so all there are the batteries. So that's 3 kilowatt battery backup, which basically backs up everything down here. So all of these sockets are backed up by that power supply, which means if my power goes out, the lights on the tank will turn out, but both of the turn pumps will still go. Obviously the filter roller and everything will still go, the dosing will still go, the cup will still go, and I've got, can't remember what it is, a couple of MP60s I think also plugged in. So I mean, saying that, 2 years I think I've had one power outage since I've been here, so it's not something I get very often. Right, so up into the fish room itself, we have, so over here is a Deltec calcium reactor. It's not a twin tech or anything, it's just a basic calcium reactor. I have it on varying amounts depending on what the consumption is, because the calc does most of it. If I do a water change, I might top it up a bit with the calcium reactor. At the moment it's running from 6 in the morning till midday, so it's not on at the moment, as you can see, because there's no bubbles coming out of the cancer. So it just runs off that little 72 bottle down there, and this is the line coming up. You see that? Yeah, that's the line coming up from the Komoa downstairs, and then it pumps up, and I put it back into the tank here. I've done that in there because when you first set these things up and you're all paranoid about whether it's working properly or not, I wanted to be able to get that camera up there to swing round and zoom in and show me that that was dripping. And my eyesight's not great, but it does show me that it's working basically. So right, so that's the calcium reactor. This is a Bubble King, what is that, 300 Deluxe external. Yeah, so that Abyss A400 pumps up to that pump there, which then obviously sucks in the air, gives me a nice foamy head. And I also, that tube there, also that's sucking air from the outside actually. So I've drilled through, I put in fresh air from the outside, and it comes down. And then on this, I am also using ozone, which is something I've done probably 2 months ago, maybe longer, I can't remember to be honest. And so the ozone unit is there, and it is supplied by Eheim pump up there. So basically that pumps down into the ozone, then up and then into the feed pipe for the Venturi on the skimmer. So that's it. So that ozone is undersized for my tank. Yeah, I mean it does an amazing job actually cleaning the water. So what else is there? So this is the return feed pipe from the skimmer, and as you can see, because the end of this pipe is underwater, you have to vent it, otherwise you'll get no foam in your skimmer, which is what this pipe here is. So that's an open-ended pipe, which is why it's higher than the tank. And so it's also handy for me to put my feed back from the calcium reactor. I did experiment with putting that back into the top lid, into the feed of a skimmer, to try and get some more CO2 out of it. But that is the return from the skimmer anyway, so there is lots of air going in there. So it doesn't suppress the pH too much. Right, what else is there? So basically this is just the fish room. There's the main electric board. What else have I got? I've got heaters, which in hindsight I'll probably never use. But when I first had the fish room, I didn't have all the lights on the tank, so it used to get chilly. I've got I've taken the cover off of that because the fan needs working on it, but I've got one, and up there I've got another one. Two smart fans. They've got a ceramic heat block in them, so I don't bring in freezing cold air in the winter or boiling hot air in the summer. And they do 90 seconds in, 90 seconds out most of the time. But because my house faces south in the summer, especially when it gets into the 30s, mid-30s, I blow out this end, so I'm not, sucking in ridiculously hot air. This is my little Bob's tank. I've got 2 rats in there at the moment. I do quarantine all my fish, so I'll go through that at some point as well. That I've already spoken about is where I do my water changes from. I could automate my water changes. In my last tank I did automated water changes actually, but I found it makes you a little bit lazy in cleaning your tank, and so I've decided that I basically just take this hose here and stick it over the top to put the water in, and then I've got this hose here which is velcro to a piece of pipe. I'll just roll it up there, and I can either, if I'm doing this end of the tank, that's the waste, I can put it in there and it just goes down in the waste, or if I'm doing this end of the tank, I tend to just wedge it through there and it goes down the sink basically. So the other thing is the lights on the tank. So this is a mix of mainly XR15 G5 blues. There are, I think, 4 G6 blues in here, and I've also got 1, 2 XR30 G4s on there. I've actually got another one here, but this one is not Mobius enabled, and it keeps going out of sync, and I've just not bothered with it, so I've left it off basically. And then I've got the lights in kind of 2 rail sections, so I've got 8 on each one. This is all 2-star aluminium, and they are hanging off these, which are basically gate openers. And then down here I've got a box where I can just lift the lights up like that. So if I want to work on the tank, I just get them up out of the way and put them back down again. So that works quite well. And that is, that's one of my doses. Right. Yeah, so that's the lights basically. They all run, I think it's Worldwide Coral's schedule template that I imported. I can't remember what it's called, but it's off one of their tanks. And then up here, you just heard that going actually, I've got another 2 dos dosas, and then this little thing is a fridge. As you can see, I've got one there, and oh, I'll see that 2 there, and they dose when I open it from here. Yeah, so and you can see in there, that big bottle is phytoplankton, and that one is first bite copepods, and at the back there is calamus. So I dose that into the tank I think 4 times a day. Well, I do 2 of each basically, and then the phytoplankton goes in once. I do 50 ml a day, but like 5 o'clock I think I put it in. What else have I got? The pumps, flow pumps on the tank itself are, I have here 1, 2, 3 NP60s, and then at the back of the tank, about reflection, I've got, that's an NP40, that's an NP40, and that's an NP40, and then that is a gyre, and then can't get that in. Okay, I suppose. So there's another MP60 there, and there's another MP60 in there. So what's that? 5 MP60s, 3 MP40s, and a gyre. And then here I've got 2 Deltec 80 watt UV sterilisers, which, as I mentioned earlier, are plumbed into the A400, so it pumps up, and then that is a gate valve, and that is a flow meter, so I can make sure that I'm getting the correct amount of flow through my UV sterilisers. And then obviously the tank sits on a, oh, that's the controllers for the 2 return pumps there as well. I put them temporary for like 2 years ago and never bothered to move them. And that's the stand, which is T-slot aluminium. That is, the top rail is, I think it's 90 by 90, and then the bottom is 45 by 90. So originally it was designed to have just 6 legs, like these legs. But I added, because I was a little bit paranoid. I wasn't really paranoid about it on the, oh, you can see that, I'm going to stay that floor, is I put the feet on, these are 100mm by 5mm aluminium shims, just like a base plate basically. Oh, you can see it there, you can see how rusty the foot gets. Yeah, just to help spread that load out a bit, because I didn't want it to start to bite into the concrete. You don't have any issues not being level. That's just the damage that salt just does. So I have to paint this floor very regularly. You can see that when where the salt don't hit so much, it stays reasonably good. But over by the sink here, I'm always spilling water all over the place really. So there's the sink I fitted in. Can't have a fish room without a sink, it's absolute godsend. Right, what else have I got? I think I've got internet out here. I put in a Wi-Fi extender so that I can run everything that needs a decent Wi-Fi connection. I've actually got the Apex is hardwired, so I've actually run a proper Cat6 internet cable out so I can plug that in. I've got a extra fan up there which kicks in if the water temperature gets to, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's something like 26 maybe. The tank itself is here, and it is 4 meters long. So basically each one of these squares is a meter square, because the tank is also a meter deep. So if you look, it's very hard to show it to be honest, but yeah, so it's 3'3" back to front, which is a meter, 4 meters long, and it is 70 centimetres tall, which is 2'3", I think, 2'3.5", something like that. I've also got a auto feeder which once a day puts in some pellets. I don't feed a lot of pellets, and that really is about it. So eventually this bit here where I do all my quarantining, so this is one of my little quarantine tanks that I use for tank transfer. So all that stuff in there is what gets put into the tank. So I've got one there and another one there which I swap over, and then with the wrasse, because they're quite finicky, I've been putting them in an observation tank as well, so let them settle in. So I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, but this is a guy who has been through QT, and he went into this tank and he got a bit of a beating from my 6-line wrasse. So he's now back in here enjoying some solace and hopefully repairing some of the fin damage that he had to him. So I think he will go. There's a yellowtail on him as well, but he's the laziest wrasse in the world because he spends about 20 hours a day sleeping. Right, I think that's it really. So can't think of anything else. I've got a portable aircon unit in here because it gets very hot basically, because obviously you got all of those lights which put out a fair bit of heat. I think they're running at 80% those lights, like when they get to their peak they ramp up and ramp down. So yeah, so this room sits about 26, 27, and obviously this is April. In the summer, if I didn't have the aircon, basically it would get boiling. So that just vents out and I can push it out of the way if I need to, or I can just turn it off if I don't need it. And that's it. That is run by my old L1 Vector, which I had on my Red Sea tank 2 years ago. Yeah, so the other reason I'm doing this video actually, yeah, because this tank is exactly 2 years old this month. So it had water put in it for the very first time 2 years ago. So it's been a long, slow process, but I haven't got my lens on, so it looks horrendously blue. But anyway, but I will go into the actual inhabitants of the tank and how I've done my quarantine, etc., etc., in another video, because I've been rambling for ages. So let me just flip the camera back around. So right, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope I didn't ramble too much. I hope it's informative to some people, and next time I will look at the inhabitants of the tank, and I'll do the fish. Mostly I'll do the rock. Talk about the rock, talk about the way I set the tank up, because they're completely different to the other tanks that I've set up, and we'll take it from there. Alright, thank you very much.